My earliest memories aren't filled with lullabies or bedtime stories. They're filled with silence, the kind that grows between people who are supposed to love each other, but just don't. I was the third of 4 children, and somehow, I became the easiest one to forget. My siblings were loud, demanding, always in the spotlight. My eldest brother was the golden boy, athletic, charming, confident. My sister, the second, born, was brilliant, always winning medals and soaking in praise. Even the youngest, the baby of the family, had an endless list of excuses made for him. But me, I was the one they forgot to call down for dinner. The one whose birthday they remembered a week late, if at all. I stopped trying to be noticed somewhere around 12. By then, I had realized that attention in our household came with expectations I could never meet. Why can't you be more like your brother? She's doing so well at school, and you, always average. You're lucky we even let you stay here without contributing anything. I was 14 when I started working part-time after school, first cleaning tables at a small diner, then tutoring young kids on weekends. I handed most of the money over to Mom, not that she asked, but because I wanted her to see that I was trying, that I was worth something. She took the money without a word of thanks. By the time I turned 16, my siblings barely spoke to me unless they needed something, a ride, a favor, a cover story. I gave all of it, thinking maybe if I was useful, I'd be loved. The love never came. The breaking point, I remember the day it all snapped with cruel, unforgettable clarity. It was a warm summer evening, and the house was filled with guests, distant cousins, neighbors, old friends. We were celebrating my brother's promotion at a fancy firm, and my sister's acceptance into med school. Laughter filled the air, and my mother's face was lit up with pride. She boasted to anyone who would listen, and you know, she said, swirling wine in her glass, I always knew those two would make it big. Always had the spark? Someone asked, smiling, what about your other two? Oh, she laughed, waving her hand dismissively. The little one, he's still finding his way. But this one, she looked right at me, eyes cold, voice sharp enough to cut skin, is the most useless child we have. Can't even hold a real job. Always quiet, always lurking. I don't know what I did wrong with that one. There was a beat of silence, a few awkward laughs. I smiled too, to keep the mask from cracking. I didn't cry, not then, not in front of everyone. I stood up calmly, walked out of the house, and never looked back. Quiet good. By that night, I packed a small bag, my laptop, a few clothes, a folder with certificates they had never bothered to look at, awards I won in school, the scholarship letter I received, the part-time job promotions I never mentioned. I had always hidden those things, hoping one day to present them like a gift. Look, Mom. I did good, don't you see me now, but that day never came. I left a simple note on the kitchen table. Thank you for the roof. I'm going to make something of myself, even if you never believed I could. I rented a tiny room in the city with the little savings I had. It was barely livable, a mattress on the floor, peeling walls, no hot water, but it was mine. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. I felt free. The pain that fuels the words, "You're the most useless child we have," echoed in my head. For months, I heard them every time I was tempted to give up, to rest. They became fuel. I took on more jobs. I worked during the day and studied at night. When I finally landed a stable job in a small tech startup, I poured everything into it. My code spoke louder than I ever had. I learned fast, built things, fixed things, became indispensable. No one knew I was sleeping only 4 hours a night, or that I sometimes skipped meals to save enough for rent. I told no one about the days I cried into my pillow, mourning the love I never received. But all of that pain, it wasn't wasted. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to be seen. I was trying to build something so big that one day, the people who looked through me would have no choice but to finally look at me. Flashbacks of the forgotten. Every time I passed a family having lunch at a park, I'd think about the meals I ate alone in the kitchen while the others laughed in the living room. Every time I saw someone hug their child, but sir, because they were too busy planning my sister's birthday party. I wasn't bitter, not yet. Something inside me had begun to harden. The part that used to ache for love now burned for justice. I didn't want revenge in the usual way. I didn't want them to suffer. I wanted them to see what they missed, see who I had become, see what I had done for them, even when they gave me nothing but silence in return. The seed of a plan, I started sending money home, quietly, anonymously. Every time I got a bonus, I sent a part of it to my mom's bank account. using an old friend's business name. She thought it came from the church, or some mysterious friend of my brother. I watched from afar as she used that money to redecorate her living room, to go on vacations, to throw birthday parties for her stars. And I let her. I didn't need the credit yet, but I kept every transaction, every bank record, every transfer confirmation. Because someday I knew the moment would come, the moment when they'd run out of other people to praise, and finally the truth would be unavoidable. The invisible child was gone. In his place stood someone no one recognized, someone they had built with their cruelty. If I had told my 18-year-old self that in just a few years I'd be making more in a month than our household did in a year, I wouldn't have believed it. I didn't become rich overnight. There was no sudden windfall. It was brutal, building a life from scratch with nothing but grit and a need to prove my worth, not to them but to myself. I lived like a ghost in my own family's narrative. They spoke of me rarely, and when they did, it was in a tone dipped in shame or discomfort. He never visits, they'd say. He's just doing his thing. I don't know what he does. Something with computers. They didn't know I was now managing entire systems for multi-million-dollar clients, or that my small freelance gigs had grown into a boutique tech consultancy that was quietly getting attention in niche circles. I stayed off social media, changed my phone number. I needed the distance, but I couldn't fully let go, not yet, because despite everything, I still loved them even if they never truly loved me. Silent giving. It started with a hospital bill. My younger brother had a minor car accident. I heard about it through a cousin who texted me, "Don't know if you care, but he's okay." That was it. No one in my immediate family called me, no updates, but I found the hospital, confirmed the charges, and paid the bill under the name of a local charity organization I occasionally donated to. A week later, I saw pictures of Mom on Facebook, smiling next to my brother. Caption, "Grateful for the angels who watch over us." Angels? I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. Keeping count, it became a pattern. When the car broke down, I paid for the repairs. When my sister needed a new laptop for med school, I sent one anonymously. When the mortgage fell behind for 3 months straight, I wired money directly to the bank. Each time, I left no trace. I used fake business names, shell accounts, or asked a friend to deliver things. I told myself I didn't need recognition, that I was doing it because I was better than their neglect, that I wasn't going to turn bitter like them. But the truth, I kept every single receipt, a folder on my laptop labeled just in case. Bank statements, emails, screenshots, delivery confirmations. It grew into a detailed archive of every act of kindness they attributed to someone else. They never thought of me, never once asked if maybe I had a hand in it. False praise. One day, I was scrolling through a cousin's Instagram story, not because I cared about the party, but because I saw my mom's face in the thumbnail. It was a family get-together, balloons, food, decorations, a celebration of how far we've come. My mother stood in the middle of the room, drink in hand, beaming with pride. "I'm just so proud of my children," she said to a small group around her. "Look at what we've built, the house, the education, the lifestyle, all because they work so hard. God has truly blessed us." And they had worked hard, I'll give them that, but the things they were being praised for, the loans that mysteriously disappeared, the sudden inflow of help they believed came from friends or luck or their own doing, it was me. I closed the video and sat in silence for a long time. Visits without knocking once. I drove back to our old neighborhood, parked 2 houses away. I watched the house for almost an hour. The garden I used to weed alone on Sundays was now filled with new flowers. The door had been repainted. A car, the one I paid for, gleamed in the driveway. I saw my mother come out briefly to water the plants, humming to herself. She looked happy. That should have made me happy too, but instead, I felt a hollow ache. Like watching a play where you built the stage, wrote the script, paid for the costumes, but were never cast in a role. Not even as an extra. The truth behind success: people think success is its own reward, that if you make it, you don't need closure or validation. But the truth is, you do. You crave that one moment when someone looks at you and says, "I was wrong about you." That moment never came. But another one did. A family in crisis. I got a call one morning from a number I didn't recognize. I ignored it. Then another, and another. By the 3rd time, something in me knew. I answered, "Hello." There was silence for a beat. Then a voice I hadn't heard in years. Is this you?" my mother asked, her voice strained. I wasn't sure you'd pick up. My heart thudded. Yes. She hesitated. "We need your help." I didn't speak. "There's been a situation with the house, some bad investments. Your brother's company, it went under. And your sister's tuitioned. We can't cover the fees anymore. We're trying, but—" I closed my eyes. The irony was almost poetic. She continued, voice cracking slightly. "I wouldn't be asking if we weren't desperate. You were always good with money, right? I know we haven't talked, but I'm the most useless child you have," I said calmly. Silence, dead silence, then a breath. A small, barely audible, "I didn't mean that." I almost laughed. "Almost let me call you back," I said, and hung up. The moment approaches, I stared at my laptop screen that night, opened the just-in-case folder, and let my eyes trace over each file. Each proof of love unrecognized, each anonymous rescue. I could fix their problem, easily, but not like this. Not through silence, not as a ghost. This time I'd make sure they knew. Not to hurt them, but to show them. To show them that the person they discarded, dismissed, and erased had been the foundation of their false pride all along. And I was done hiding. The morning I returned home, no one recognized my car. I'd rented a matte black SUV, nothing flashy, but clean, quiet, powerful. The kind of car that didn't need to make noise to be noticed. I hadn't seen the house in nearly 5 years, but nothing much had changed the red brick walls, the sagging porch swing I used to fix every summer. Except now, it was repainted, refurbished, relandscaped. My money. I knocked once, then twice. A familiar voice shouted from inside. "I'm coming." My mother opened the door. She froze. It took her a few seconds to register my face. "Go," she breathed, her voice small. "You came." I gave a small nod. "You said you needed help." She stepped aside and let me in. Reunited in need, the living room was filled with uncomfortable silence. My siblings were all there. My older brother, once the pride of the family, looked tired, dark bags under his eyes. His confident posture was gone. My sister sat on the couch, shoulders slumped, hands clenched in her lap. The youngest, still immature, avoided eye contact. It was almost ironic, the golden children, dulled and desperate. "Thank you for coming," Mom said carefully, as if walking on thin ice. "We didn't know who else to ask. Apparently not each other," I said, taking a seat across from them. "So, what happened?" The story spilled out in fragments. My brother's company had gone bankrupt after a failed investment. My sister had racked up tuition debt after losing her scholarship. The mortgage was behind, credit cards maxed out. My mother's voice cracked when she admitted they were about 2 months away from losing the house. I listened in silence. Not with anger, not with pity, but with a calm they didn't recognize because they'd never known me. The unmasking, when they finally finished, I leaned back and pulled out a black folder from my bag. I placed it gently on the coffee table. "What's that?" and my mother asked. I opened it, proof of everything, the receipts, the transfers, the anonymous gifts. The tuition payments, the hospital bills, the house renovations, line by line, year by year. Their faces twisted in confusion at first. Then disbelief, then horror. "You," my sister started, her voice catching in her throat. "You paid for all of this?" my brother asked quietly. I looked at my mother. "You called me the most useless child you had." She flinched. "While I was working 16-hour days to pay off your debts. You said I never held a real job, while I was funneling money into this family under fake names, because even then, I didn't want credit. I just wanted to help. I wanted to matter. Silence. You thought those donations came from church, that the medical bills were a miracle, that your children were thriving by their own brilliance." I pointed to the folder. I kept the receipts, not out of spite, out of pain. I wanted to believe someday I'd be seen. A mother's cracked mask, my mother's face went pale. For once, she had nothing to say. All her carefully curated pride, all her talk of her successful children, crumbled in one moment of truth. She whispered, barely audible. "I didn't know. You didn't want to know." I replied, "You had a narrative. I didn't fit in it, so you erased me. I'm sorry." She said quickly, almost instinctively, "No." I said, "You're not. You're embarrassed. There's a difference." Her mouth opened, but I held up a hand. This isn't about revenge. I'm not here to scream. I'm not here to shame you. I'm just here to say this, I'm done. The final gift, I pushed a second envelope across the table. This will cover the remaining mortgage and 6 months of expenses. After that, you're on your own. They stared at it in disbelief. You're still helping us? My sister asked, tears brimming. For the last time, I said softly, you don't have to do this. My brother added, his voice thick with guilt. I know, I said. That's why I am. I turned to my mother one last time. I used to think being a good child meant staying quiet, sacrificing everything, and expecting nothing in return. But I've learned something better. Being a good person doesn't mean being anyone's doormat. It means knowing when to walk away with dignity. The door closed as I stood up, folder in hand, and headed for the door. My mother called out, wait. I paused but didn't turn around. I really am sorry, she said, and this time it sounded almost real. Almost I hope you find peace, I said, the way I had to find it without you. And I walked out. Epilogue. Reclaiming self a month later, I moved to a new city. No fanfare, no social media posts, just me, my laptop, and the quiet strength I had built brick by brick. I wasn't the invisible child anymore. I was a man who had carried a family on his back while they spat in his face and still walked away without bitterness. That's not weakness, that's power, sweet, quiet, unshakable power, and in the silence they left me with all those years ago, I built an empire.